Awesome. So thank you so much for your time today. Today we have on this panel a selection of our great female leaders from our portfolio. So we have Nathalie from Curve, Camille from Plural AI, and Aiga from Billie. And the panel is being moderated by myself and Deepali. Maybe Deepali, I'll let you maybe kick it off with a bit of an introduction, and then we can sort of take it from there.
Thank you, Gunita, and thank you, Nathalie, Camille, and Aiga, for joining. I haven't met you guys yet, or you ladies yet, but I recently joined Speedinvest as a venture partner with a focus on female founders. I've been in the angel ecosystem for many years. Now I have a portfolio of 14 or 15 women that I've actually invested in, and have been advising women for many years, but always feel that there are not enough role models, not just in the sheer numbers of women, but also in the stories we tell. So this year we decided, as a part of International Women's Day, that we would highlight some of the very key women in our own fintech portfolio, and therefore wanted you to join us, because I think there's much to be learned from your own trials and tribulations. Gunita and I will moderate a panel. I will pass it over to Gunita for now. And we will have a Q&A session. So depending on how many questions that come in, we want to open it up to the audience as well. So thank you for joining us today, and over to you, Gunita.
Thanks, Deepali. And yeah, I'll just get started with a brief introduction to myself, and then we'll go on to the panelists, and we'll ask each of the panelists to do a brief introduction to them. So yeah, I am Gunita. I work in the Fintech investment team at Speedinvest. And for us, basically, the Fintech investment team is focused on early stage startups, and we like to invest in the most promising companies and also in female founders. We have invested in a number of interesting fintech and insurtech startups in this space. I joined Speedinvest just over a year ago, so last year, January. Prior to that, I was at Atomico. I used to work there on the fundraising side for their circa $1 billion fund. And my background prior to that was that I was at Deutsche Bank. I worked there for 4 years across 2 different teams. And also, while I was there, I worked on my own startup idea. And basically, the process of getting that off the ground was what got me interested in the venture capital space. And so I moved over from there into VC. So that's a bit about me. I guess maybe let's open it up to our panelists as well to introduce themselves. I guess I'm seeing Nathalie at the top of my screen. So maybe Nathalie, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Nathalie Oestmann, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Curve. Curve is part of the Speedinvest portfolio. Curve is an all your cards in one proposition. We're based out of London in the UK, although we're present and available in Europe, and we'll be launching later this year in the US. We've been around since 2016, have 2 million customers, have processed more than $2 billion worth of transactions, and have a very compelling proposition for the future of our financial world of having, many different banks. So we are not a bank, but we believe that you could have a better banking experience. So that's what we're focused on.
Perfect. Thank you, Nathalie. And yeah, really excited to have you guys part of our portfolio. Okay, should we go to Camille next? I can see her next on my screen.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Camille. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plural. And we provide data insight solution to financial institutions. And I'll go into what that entails later on in the call, hopefully. A bit about myself. My own background's in finance. So I started my career in investment banking and later private equity, and left finance because I had ambitions of starting my own company. I then joined another fintech startup called Market Finance back, this was after their Series A, where I did various roles across commercial strategy, sales ops. Then I joined Entrepreneur First, which is a deep tech incubator program, which is how I came to start Plural. And we're building essentially what we call a knowledge management platform aimed primarily, but not only at financial institutions, where we help you build what we call your own bespoke knowledge graph of information. We're now about 3 years into our journey. We've just released our latest product in the private beta that we're currently testing with customers. There's a lot of AI and NLP that's involved in there, so lots of technical challenges. That's been really interesting, and going to be increasing our commercial reach hopefully later this year. So that's me.
Great, thanks, Camille. And yeah, really exciting what you guys are doing in the deep tech meets fintech space. Great, next we have Aiga from Billie. Aiga, would you like to give a brief introduction to yourselves?
Yes, of course. Welcome everyone. Hi, my name is Aiga Senftleben. I'm with Billie. I'm the co-founder and general counsel. My background is actually in law. I'm a lawyer. I didn't really start I kind of became an entrepreneur more by accident, and it was like a journey. I started as a solicitor, and then went to PayPal, and then went to a startup earlier to build a legal team, which was called ZenCap. They were bought by Funding Circle, and about a year and a half after we were acquired by Funding Circle, me and some other people from the Funding Circle management started to think about founding their own company, and this is how Billie started. This was in 2016. At Billie, we really, it's a B2B company. We focus on really making payments a lot easier for small and medium-sized companies. We started off being regulated. We received the regulating from the German BaFin regulator, which is quite hard to get and also to keep, to be honest. And yeah, since then we have two licenses on the side. We have about 120 employees now, and we're based in Berlin. And thank you for having me on the panel. Looking forward to it.
Great, and it's great to have you, Aiga. And you actually answered a bit of the question I was going to start with posing to you guys, which is, well, for Camille and Aiga, I wanted to understand how you guys sort of came up with the idea and started the company. I guess you sort of touched on that, but if there's anything you want to elaborate, and also Camille, if you want to go into that, that would be great.
Yeah, I can elaborate. For me, like the journey also in fintech was also like a journey that I hadn't really planned, right? Like when I was like a solicitor, and I was thinking of going in-house, and then thinking of which sectors actually interested, I thought that the fintech space is super innovative and disrupting. I thought it was also young and cool people. At the time I was still young, working there. And from the legal side, and this is where I came from, it's quite challenging too. So if you are in the legal role, it's quite important to what you do, and you actually will work creatively on the products and have to advise around that. This I found interesting. So I started with PayPal, and PayPal is this huge wheel, and you're just a tiny cog. And I wanted to have more like my own wheel that I can push around, although the wheel might be smaller. So then I went to ZenCap, and there we decided in a team of 7 actually that we want to start another company, mainly driven on seeing that the product that Funding Circle had offered in Germany doesn't really work in Germany. And actually they also aren't offering their product in Germany anymore. And we decided that we want to have our own license, that we want to offer different kind of more short-term loan, and then we also want to integrate technology a lot deeper than it had been at the time. So these were the reasons why we thought we want to start another company. And then it was actually took like a few months to develop, to think about really what is going to be the model. Let's use a model where we can use much more data, where we can have much more intelligent decisions made. And this is how we came up with Billie and started it, about 4 years ago, a bit more than 4 years ago.
It's great.
Nice. I can elaborate on us as well. So, I mean, the reason I started Plural originally was to basically automate some of my frustrations back when I was in finance. So I worked in private equity, so I was looking at investing companies, something that Gunita you'll be very familiar with. And the fact that it's still to this day very incredibly difficult when you're researching companies, markets, people, like any sort of information about them, and particularly when you're looking to invest in them. Finding and manipulating that information is incredibly difficult because it's very messy, very unstructured. You're looking at all kinds of different things. And I wanted to make that experience easier rather than having to rely on Googling around for information, pasting into Excel, pasting into PowerPoint. And when I joined my next company, to Market Finance, I started interacting with engineers and data scientists in particular, and I realized that they had access to a ton of really cool tools and methodologies to help them do their work, particularly around NLP, so natural language processing. So I kind of was like, oh, hang on, why don't we have anything like that for us, for the kind of workflows that I was doing? So that kind of what sparked my interest into that. And when I joined Entrepreneur First, I met my co-founder who had a background in AI, and so that's what we've been working on for the last few years.
Thanks, Camille. And I guess we would also like to ask Nathalie. So we understand, you've joined Curve, and we want to understand like what led you to joining Curve. What was the experience like coming into like a primarily male sort of dominated leadership team, and how did that come across for you?
Yeah, so I didn't give my background. So I am a payments person through and through, I guess. 15 years with American Express. Then I went over to Samsung Pay and launched Samsung Pay across Europe. And it was during that time at Samsung Pay that I met Shahar. I met him when he was still presenting. So Deepali, it's probably the same time you met him, which was, a presentation, probably just a prototype back in 2015, 16, early 16. I was really intrigued by the model and what he was planning to do in terms of this platform for your finances. That made a lot of sense to me, particularly as open banking was coming out. This is not open banking, but it looked very similar to that. And at Samsung, I was having some issues. And as time was progressing, I realized that a platform like Curves could really help Samsung with their Samsung Pay feature. Interestingly enough, we now have a partnership with Samsung, so must have done something right along the way. But we hit it off. We really got along. Also, Shahar was having some problems with Amex, so he was asking me for advice. So I was, just helping him along as as just a sounding board as to how he might approach the problem. And it just developed from there, and we just started to talk a lot more. Because of what I did at Samsung Pay at the time, I was in the middle of the Fintech evolution in 2015-16. I was one of the first people to meet Tom Bloomfield, who said, "Hey, I want to be in Samsung Pay." And I'm like, "Okay, let me see your Android app." And he said, I don't have one. And I'm like, maybe you want to come back when you do, it was like really early days. And so, I got really involved in the community and what was going on, and became more and more interested in pursuing that. Now, when I was deciding to leave Samsung, Shahar did offer me the role of COO. He was still a Series A company. Given my large company background, it just wasn't the right time for me to be there. Even though we really, got along really well and I liked what he was offering, I said to him, "I'm not the right person for you at this stage of the company." I think that was the right decision then. I might not today say no to an early stage company, but at the time I probably didn't have the right tool set. And I told him, love what you're doing. I'm really, it's sad for me to say, but it's not going to be right. And I went to another company, Idemia, to do some digital identity work. But that didn't work out so well. And Shahar found out I was back onto the job market. So he gave me a call. He said, "Look, I just finalized my Series B. I'm much bigger now. We have about 150 employees, looking to grow. What do you think about now?" And I was like, wow, well, first of all, I got a call twice, which I didn't ever expect. But secondly, I was really, really intrigued by what the possibilities could be. And it felt, I need to be honest, it felt like a safer environment for me to be in, because I knew that I was offering something as an enterprise person in terms of process, dealing with a matrix, or what we call a helix organization, dealing with multiple geolocations. That was what I grew up in at Amex as a global leader. And so that's when it started to make sense to me to join. And I did 18 months ago. So it was really, it's been a great journey since then, and we've grown the company, and the valuation of the company has exploded, and it's been really interesting.
That's really cool. And it's great to hear how, like, the second time you approached you were, I guess, more excited about the opportunity, and you decided to join it and come on board, which is great. And you touched on something there, which is about also, your previous experience at Samsung Pay and in the financial services industry. And one of the questions I had for you was, how have you seen over the last few years, how have you seen the financial services industry change? Are you, for example, seeing more women, senior women leaders? What has changed over the last few years, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I have, like I said, grown up, you know, in a large global financial service institution. You said, you know, how did it feel joining? I didn't answer that question. Joining a male-only leadership team, right? Boy,
Yeah.
when you said that, I was like, did I? Did I? And yes, I did. But you know, why did I say did I? Because it's par for the course, right? I'm very often the only woman in a meeting. Very often. I've become very comfortable and used to that. I'm also an engineer by background, so I've always been used to this kind of environment. But the reality is, we're progressing, but I don't think we're progressing as much as we would have liked. So currently, excos in financial services are 20% women and 23% women on boards. You know, we're looking at, you know, there's been something in the UK called the 33%, which is 33% of women on boards, has been ongoing for many years, and we're still not there. It has improved since, let's say, you know, 10 years ago, where we only had 11 people on excos, or 11% of women on excos or boards. So there has been a doubling of figures in 10 years, but it's still, I think, quite laggard to where it should be. And there's no reason, there's no good reason for women to be scared to join a small company, a startup, a scale up, or a fintech. However, you know, having spent a lot of time thinking about it, there are quite a few barriers that make it less appealing to women, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit, but I don't think that they are significant, and I would always encourage somebody to go for it.
Nathalie, yeah. There's a question for you, sorry, in the chat, which says, is the leadership team still all male apart from you?
It is. So on the at the C level, we are 4: a CEO, COO, CFO, and CPTO, product and technology. So yeah, so of the 4, I'm 1, so 25%. Across the wider, we have a wider leadership team. So these are VPs. There we have, I think we have 12 now, of which 3 are women. 4. So again, we're hovering around the 20s. And what by the way, I have just written an article. I don't think we're doing good enough on this, of course. So yeah.
And I think you were sort of starting to go into this. What do you think are some of the barriers that women face to, you know, having, or the barriers that exist to having more women on the leadership team?
So look, there's a funnel that happens across your career, right? Even at Amex, it happened. Amex had, I don't know what their current rates are, but, you know, back when I was there, you know, you would have 50% women at the lower levels. And then as you worked your way up the leadership team, you know, you would find yourself in the low teens. And you know, there's quite a few barriers to that. First is you don't have the mentors that are women to help you along. I think it's improving and will continue to improve. But the reality is you need somebody who can guide you and who understands your perspective. And it's a well-known fact that women prefer women mentors and men prefer men mentors. It's just logic sense, you know, you just have that kind of connection, of course. The other thing is, you know, I've heard this a lot of times, by the way, back on the mentoring, women get tons of mentoring, but not a lot of sponsorship, right? So that's really frustrating. Why is it that we need so much mentorship and there's not somebody who's going to help us along? I do pride myself in sponsoring a lot of women to continue to progress on their career. The other thing is, and we're going to touch upon it later, I can talk to you about the jungle gym of a career. I have not gone up a career ladder. I've had a jungle gym. I've had children. My husband and I have tried every single permutation of working that you can think of, including myself. So I've done everything, but always stayed really focused on keeping my foot in the door, keeping myself interested in my job, And so there is that point in time where women may take a bit of a step back to focus on family. COVID has made that even more prominent with the schooling that's been going home, particularly when you have younger kids. I think that's been incredibly challenging. But I say to men, I say it's good to invest in your partner's career. It'll help you later. And to women, I say, even if you're handing everything over to childcare, again, it's a very short period of time, and you'll be thankful to have the foot in the door. So, I think that there's just different points in time where you're going to have a little bit more of a struggle than others. And I'm coming out of my parenting, so my kids are soon all grown up. So I've had that journey already, and had to make those have those discussions at home or make those trade-offs.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And actually, it's one of the things I wanted to come back to later on navigating work-life, sort of family and work. And I think, let's come back to that one. I think it's a really important point. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about fundraising. And so all of you have been through some sort of a fundraising process in terms of, getting to the various stages that your firm is at. And I actually want to ask you, Camille, because I know obviously Plural AI went through Entrepreneur First when you kind of in your early days. And the question I had was, why did you decide to go into Entrepreneur First? Like, what led you there? Did you find it beneficial? And also, more generally, do you think it's beneficial for female founders to go into accelerator programs like this?
Yeah, that's a big topic to unpack as well. So I think so. Yeah, like I decided to go into Entrepreneur. So Entrepreneur First, for those that might not be familiar with it, is like super early stage. It's kind of like, imagine Y Combinator, but like you don't have a company yet. You don't even have an idea. Sometimes you might have a problem space, as I like to call it, which was my case, and you don't have a co-founder, and you go into the program to meet other people with which you might co-found a company that then gets initially kind of funded by EF, and then you go on to raise a normal round, etc., which is what we did. So the kind of program is 6 months, and the first period of that is actually basically like entrepreneur speed dating. So you kind of get to meet lots of other people and see whether you match and kind of find ideas with them. And that was actually the reason why I decided to go into it, where at the time I actually had started, I've been kind of looking to start a company for a while. I've been working some side projects with some people actually at my previous company, but they kind of like didn't really quite kind of find the right person to kind of gel with, all that kind of stuff. And so when I heard about EF, it kind of struck me as the perfect kind of setup for it, because particularly my background is finance. So I'm the CEO, so I'm very much kind of commercial business, kind of operation focused, not at all technical, which is, if you're looking to start an AI company, is a bit of an issue. So it was not something I could have done by myself. And, recruiting CTOs would have been a different thing. So that was kind of the main reasons to meet co-founders, particularly technical co-founders in my case, to start a company together. And I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing today if it weren't for EF. So that was kind of what led me there initially. In terms of your other point, which is, particularly for female founders going into those accelerator programs, I mean, there is the wider background to this is that obviously as a female founder, it's more difficult to raise funds. I say obviously there's lots of caveats to that I might not get into now, but yes, it is more difficult as a female founder to raise funds and VC funding in particular. So the big thing that EF does provide you is basically you kind of get, it's signal theory. You get kind of branded of like, cool, they're a good company, they're solid, they've got an interesting background. And because you get pre-vetted, it's easier to then raise funding after that. And so that is definitely something that I found was beneficial, is that the kind of the branding effect of what EF will give you will basically put you in a better stead when you're talking to VCs afterwards, which definitely will help with your fundraising outcomes. So I mean, like the whole EF itself will have issues itself to do with female, the number of female and diverse candidates that kind of come through the program. I mean, we were a cohort of 100 to start with, and there were only like 10 women, and then I think 2 of us made it through to the end. So because you have several cut-off days, so you got 100 people at the start, kind of maybe about 40 finished the program, and 2 of there was me and another women CEO on there, and since of our cohort, I'm the only one still left actively running the company that we kind of came through with. So yeah, so even EF is definitely not exempt of its own issues, but certainly they try and make a lot of that much better, and it is one of the ways to increase fundraising opportunities for women.
Yeah, and that's really interesting what you said about, it being harder to raise funds as a female founder. I think there is a lot on, like female founded versus male founded teams, and kind of what sort of attention they get in investor meetings. And actually, so Aiga, I think you guys did not go through an accelerator, and I think we'd be keen to understand what was the fundraising journey like for Billie. Do you have any advice for other women who are on the journey now? And were there any, men or women who helped you in a lot in your journey?
I think we had kind of like, if you go like the team, because the team had been before Billie, they'd been with Senftleben Funding Circle, and at the time we had an incubator, at the time Rocket Internet, for ZenCap at the time. So in these 2.5 years that I've been there, we got to know a lot of investors, because we also already were doing rounds. So you do have we had the chance to build a pretty solid network of all these things you need, including like the team, including the knowledge about the regulatory environment, actually also the regulators you need to build up in relationship with them, but also investors when we decided to start Billie. So there was quite a good network already in place. And we were a team of 7 who were quite experienced who kind of are doing it all the second time and know a lot more. So I think this helped, but it's not a typical way how you found a company. So it's not helpful for any advice. Like you can't draw from these conclusions really a lot.
Yeah. There's a lot of really interesting research actually on fundraising as a woman versus a man, and the types of questions you receive and there's a researcher, I forget her name, but she did some really interesting about the frame of the questions, the fact that you receive more negative. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the whole kind of point being that you will receive much more kind of negative or kind of like preventive, like questions aimed like, oh, how do you kind of protect this risk or downside, etc., versus men will receive much more positive, like, oh, tell me about the vision, the future, where you see this going, and that kind of stuff. So that's really interesting, and there are ways of trying to reframe the question and kind of like shift gears and putting it back onto a trajectory that's more positive. So there are some stuff there, and even that having gone through an incubator, it's still like fundraising is still incredibly difficult, right? It makes it slightly easier, but not that much more.
I agree with this. VCs I see them as rather conservative, and a lot of them just give money to themselves 20 years ago or 10 years ago, right? When they see some other person and think, oh, they're really good, and I often think very similar to you, and then most often men, right? So you kind of like think, that's me 15 years ago, and I mean this is probably unconscious bias, which is something that you have to kind of reflect on. Also, as a woman, I shouldn't want to only like help other women just because it's similar to me, and also definitely not only people with my personality, but also other personalities. So this is something that you have to reflect on and see. This is why I'm definitely a tendency to be drawn to people that are exactly like me, and we immediately hit up a conversation about, I don't know, the sports we like doing, etc. Right? This is much easier, and this is what a lot of people say. The VCs, this like bro culture. It's like, yeah, yo, bro stuff. This is something that VCs need to reflect upon, because that, I think, doesn't, although it's not meant in a negative way, but it doesn't come across super inviting to women.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think also what you're saying about like investing in people who are like yourselves, I think obviously, I guess VCs try and create diverse investment teams as well to try and like, combat that a little bit. But actually, I guess one of the things like, Camille, their study you were mentioning on the types of questions that are asked, I think that's quite a famous one. I think the findings were also that regardless of being male or female, people still ask more preventative questions towards women. So it is something that, the industry does need to work on. And in terms of also, kind of eliminating a bias, unconscious bias, whether it's through training or through just more interactions as well. I think it is something really important. And there's also on bro culture, which you were talking about, Aiga, there's been like a lot of like books that have been written about this. And I think they are trying to work on towards making VC a bit more inclusive as well. And I think that is important to work on that.
Can I flip the question on you guys? I know we're supposed to answer the question.
Yeah,
I mean, do you feel that the awareness that this is in fact a thing is helping to change the investment community a bit?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, to Camille's point, and I'll come to your point, Nathalie, is not just that, women also see lower valuations in businesses or in sectors which are considered to be male dominated, which I find quite interesting. Whereas a man raising money for like a femtech business will not see any reduction in valuation. So there's the research extends beyond. Recently, I met a founder, actually two founders, one male and one female, both being lead term sheet from the same fund. And the woman had half the valuation and a convertible note structure versus the man. And they were both sole founders, very early stage, both coming from the corporate side, which I found super interesting. So there's a lot more behind the scenes that we don't see. Obviously for Speedinvest, they have been focusing on diversity for a while now. And I was really just brought in to turbocharge some of the female founder stuff that they do, because I've been doing this for 8 years now. I have seen a change. I have seen, I can't tell you how many funds and partners call me on a regular basis and say, tell us about the female founders you're seeing. But I think more change will come as we see more exits, as we see more women like you going through the spectrum, because at the end of the day, VC is also a game which works on FOMO, and if they see more money coming out of it, and money really talks, in my view. Of course, other things like D&I training and getting people to understand that this is an issue is also a big hurdle. But lots and lots of things that I see on a regular basis, super interesting. Also pregnant women, I took a step back in my own career. Pregnant women fundraising, it's not easy at all, because womb occupancy status is still in due diligence criteria in this day and age. So many challenges, to be honest, that we see.
I was pregnant when we founded Billie, by the way.
Well done, you. You want to talk a little bit about
I don't know. It just all kind of really happened. And pretty much before I committed to joining Billie with my co-founders, I discussed with them how that, first of all, that I'm pregnant. That was very early on, and how I would see this could work. And then I also discussed the same with my partner. That's the other super valuable part here. My partner and me had this great idea to do half-half, right? Didn't work out in the end. He did much more than me. But I said, look, I think I can, and it worked out in the end. We founded the company in October. In December, we had the seed round. Then we had the refinancing, which we need in the business. And then we had the license, kind of all before I went into maternity leave over the summer for 5 months. And then I came back in September. So it worked really amazingly well in the end, which is also because my team, my co-founders are all great and are totally fine with this. I pretty much told them, please don't call me at least like the first 4 weeks, because I need to get to know my son. I need to be not stressed. But after that, I just often showed up at work, and Leo was with me. I mean, they're babies, right? They don't mind like
tagging along.
Yeah, it was really nice and natural. And of course, my partner then did like a year of paternity leave. So this is also great and very helpful. And I think I couldn't have done it without that. So these are two things, like this, like have your idea of what you will be as a mother. And some people will say, I want to be for 2 years with my child. I knew I won't, and it totally turned out that way. I find like hanging out with a baby incredibly lonely at times. So just, when they're that little, I found it very intense. And it worked out really well, and still does.
So you almost build that support infrastructure around you, including, your business partners as well as your husband, and
and have them understanding the situation you're in, and actually also like sharing. And then I said, like, I can't guarantee see anything, but I'm pretty sure, and I know myself pretty well. This is how I will see it. If the baby's healthy and everything goes well, then this is how we want to do it. Could have gone another way, would have also been fine, but it worked actually exactly that way. So that was a very encouraging story. And yeah, like all my co-founders, they were like, yeah, like we all have kids at some point.
Yeah, and men never have to really tell the investors that they're going to have a child, right? So, and to be honest, this year I've heard lots of, I don't want to hog up too much time, but this year I feel Zoom has leveled the playing field, because women have told me, you know, I was pregnant, I had a baby, and nobody even knows that that's happened. I've just managed to fundraise just fine, which I find super interesting. Shouldn't be like that.
Because we've also heard that with all the homeschooling and stuff, it's some kind of in a lot of family, they still go to old role models where like both parents work full time, and now you have to do homeschooling. Suddenly it's the mother having to do all of this. So and this is something that I think in general society we have to work on, that like it shouldn't be only the mother's job to like make sure that childcare, like there's the nursery, etc. That should well be evenly spread.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, hopefully, like with COVID and work from home, it's become a bit more like, you know, both parents, because having kids at home when schools are closed, are becoming responsible for having to take care of the kids. Hopefully that has evened the playing field a bit. But maybe this is a good point.
The studies are showing not.
No, really.
Not at all. It's falling on.
So that we're back in the 50s. It's super frustrating.
I mean, maybe this is a good point to think about this question then, about like, you know, if you have any top tips on how to navigate like, you know, family and work and being a working mom, and also, you know, how you get to level the playing field a little bit as well.
I mean, Sheryl Sandberg once said, oh God, now I forgot the quote. It's something like, the most important thing in my career was also actually my husband or my partner taking this as a serious career and supporting this by looking after the children. I think she had 4 children and ended running Facebook. So you can do everything, but you need support, and it can be support from everywhere, by the way. But it's also great to have support from the man, and it shouldn't be bad for men to step back in their job as well. That's something that also I see a lot of women might not want, right? They don't want men to say, look, I'm taking a year off for childcare. My boyfriend was constantly asked whether he's an intern or whether he's unemployed, or like people, this is what he got. Like, it's like, why are you not working? Why are you doing like 1 year of paternity leave? There must be a problem with this person. He was a freelance UX designer. He was absolutely fine on the job side, but it was like interesting. That was the presumptuous question that he got. There must be something wrong, otherwise he wouldn't look so much, spend so much time with his kid. So yeah.
So I've done everything. I've had a co-working job where I worked 3 days a week with another woman. I've worked 4 days a week. I've worked 5 days a week. My husband took a year off. That's an interesting story. I've done daycare because I didn't think my infant child could, be with just one person because they can't talk to me. I've done nannies. I've done all of it. I've been through the entire journey, and there's pros and cons to everything. I also took off both times 8 months for maternity leave. I don't regret any of it. It's all been great. I've been very involved in my kids' life, and at times also had jobs where I traveled and was not very present at home. So I've been through it all. The one piece of advice that I give somebody, if you're going to really want to focus for a period of time, and by the way, kids always bounce back, so they do, is get somebody at home. Whatever that might be, if that ends up being somebody that you're paying to be at home, especially when the kids are a bit younger, it's just very helpful. I just say it's, a lot of men have someone at home if they have a traditional environment. So you do that for you. And that's helped a lot at times where my career was maybe more intense. And by the way, careers go through periods where they're very, very intense, and sometimes they're maybe not so intense, and you take advantage of all of those situations and you recognize them for what they are. But yeah, again, I'm I'm a big proponent that it should never be linear. And if you see that things are really falling apart, then step back. The funny story I have about when my husband, the kids, I had two kids, I have two daughters. They were whatever, 2 and newborn. And my husband, I went back to work full time, and my husband said, okay, I'll take off and I'll take care of the kids. And I would come home on the first weeks and the house would be a mess. And he'd be like holding the 2 kids like, ah, and he'd say, so what's for dinner? And I'm like, that's not how it works. Yes, anyway, so it was like, we had a couple of transitional challenges in the beginning, and then it got smooth.
Yeah, and I guess it's always interesting managing kids and also, like, you know, splitting the responsibilities between the husband and the wife. And I think there's also a question here about, so there seems to be more awareness about balancing paternal maternity leave, giving more opportunity to women to return to work sooner. How are you finding this in your interactions at the decision makers level?
So, well, first of all, in the UK, where a majority of our employees are for Curve, we have about 300 people in the UK. We are starting to see our workforce having children. And the women are supported by the government to take extended maternity leave, you know, so that we are finding that men are taking paternity leave, but again, not extending that because it ends up being unpaid. So the government needs to catch up with this more progressive approach, which I fully support, by the way.
Me too, 100%, because Europe is so far ahead when it comes to paternal policies and the UK is so far behind. It's almost very, very sad.
Yeah, and
it's being discriminatory against men. How can this even be allowed?
Great.
Because you don't have the ECJ anymore.
but do you as startups, do you get to write your own paternal policies, or do you have to comply with what the government is offering?
I mean, the government in Germany offers 14 months pay for parents that leave, and it's up to 1,800 euros a month, depending on how much you've earned. And you can split it 7/7, but one person has to take minimum 2 months, the other one 12 months. So me and my partner did, I think I did 5 and he did the rest. So this is how you can split this paternity money that you're given by the state. Still in Germany, it's often that men take, I think, an average 3 months and women then 11 or something. This is probably the norm, but this has been shifting a lot. This way of supporting parental leave it's been introduced in 2006, and before then it was nearly no men taking any time off to look after children. Now the 2 months are pretty much standard, and a lot of people take a bit more.
I think Austria is the same, and I think we have a principal at Speedinvest. He will be taking paternal leave and probably taking a much longer period of time, because I think that pay makes a big difference. You know, if you're getting paid, then you tend to take it. The men, the women anyways will take unpaid, but the men tend to take it if it's paid. That's what research has shown.
Yeah, and I think having some sort of like equal maternity and paternity leave is would go a long way in this kind of discussion and you know, leveling the playing field a little bit as well. We have a question from the panelists, which is kind of more on the hiring and talent side of things. So from the audience, sorry. So the question to panelists is, what in your experience is the bigger challenge, attracting female talent or hiring and onboarding female talent within your organizations?
That's very easy to answer.
Finding them.
Yeah. They have no problem in our organization. I want to say I think I can really proudly say women don't have a problem being in the onboarding, but they need to come to Billie. And I think it's actually also hard to find really good men, right? So as well here, we constantly looking for talent. I do think we are publishing numbers like the gender pay gap that we don't have at Billie, because we want to show, look, it is important for us to monitor these numbers and to look at it. We don't have any gap at all in the levels. But even if you look at all women and all men, and then men are being paid, I think, 5% more. So that shows how many women we have in the leadership. This has been really growing in the last years. I think this is something how you can then, when you have high talent, I think this is something definitely you have to introduce in the recruiting process, because it's quite unique, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd add to that actually. Yeah, finding women is very, very difficult. But particularly for us, we hire primarily engineering roles, and so that's just, you kind of compound the difficulty in that respect. And I think I have a like really difficult decision sometimes where like you kind of like a lot of the really good women candidates, and I believe there's a bit of a cohort effect going on where a lot of the really good women candidates that are coming to me are quite junior, and so we can't afford, we're a small startup, we can't afford to really support that many junior candidates. It wouldn't even be a good environment for them because we don't have the structure and the kind of environment to really develop and train them. And so we are looking primarily for more experienced candidates, and those experienced candidates tend to be men. And so I'm like, I see a lot of women that in like 3 to 4 years, they'll be great. And I'm like, okay, cool. I can track and nurture them, but I can't hire them right now. And it really pains me because I'm like, I actively mind hire my engineering team.
Send them to me.
I will, yeah, send them to me. And I think there should be something there around kind of developing, networks of engineering women and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like a constant, like my engineering team is all male, and our team is all male aside from me. And I'm like, how do we make this better? But also I have like the pressure of we're so desperate to hire people and good engineers, and even if it were just not a gender question, it would just be already incredibly difficult. So if you add the pressure of actively trying to hire for diverse talents, then it becomes and so I have like a business pressure of like, well, we just don't have anyone, let alone any women. So yeah, I believe a little bit of that is a cohort effect, and like in 5 years I already have like a pool of like, I see them becoming really, really good engineers, but which is not good for us today. But I will send them to you, Nathalie.
Please. Yeah, no, we have, we're a little more advanced, but we had the same issue a little over a year ago. We only had 3% women in engineering. We're now up to 14%, but still not great. Very aware of that. We are bringing women up. Our customer experience team, so the customer support, are 50% women. So, any who might be attracted into going into the engineering space, we are very willing to help bring them, and we have done that with no experience, and then we will teach them as long as they're willing to learn. And we now have in place a career growth framework so that you can know and you understand how you're going to build your career by staying at Curve. And, with all of us, with our success, that career growth can be very fast. It's really, it's amazing to see as the companies grow. We're very willing to pile on responsibility where there's no use waiting if somebody can do it who's already there, so we've seen a lot of great things. But yes, attracting women is very difficult, and I've even gone to a lot of the career fairs, to try to be at least present and see and speak to the women that are there. It's hard.
Yeah, and that's really good that you have the career growth framework. I guess some sort of structure can also help sometimes with talent and attracting and retaining talent. I think you've kind of touched, all of you here, on the question that I had, which is like how you build a diverse leadership team, and like, how can you drive diversity in your business as well, which I think.
Well, actually, this is one of the things I'm incredibly proud of. So we do have a very diverse team. If we go beyond, because it's not about gender diversity, it's also about all types of diversity. And the way we've done that, just for others who have small companies, is we've gone through quite a lot of partners to make sure we're attracting, the diverse and inclusive environment that we want. So we work with inclusive recruiting, Fintech for all. We got the Diversio is another one, and we got we went for the Global Diversity and Inclusion Certificate, which is a standard that's been adopted in the UK, so that we can show that we're dedicated to diversity. So we're doing quite a lot, and obviously we measure this like crazy. So So, we have more than 45 different nationalities across our employee base at Curve. So, really, really proud of the diversity that we do have. So that's, that at least is a success point.
That's a really important point. I mean, obviously, like we often, I think one aspect of diversity is the, gender diversity, but diversity comes in so many other aspects, and it's important to have diversity of thought, diversity of cultures, and so on. And I think it's really important to try and build that within the team. So that's really good that, it's something that you guys are kind of working on building. I think I have a question also for the audience. I think, please continue to send your questions to us via the Q&A functionality, and we will ask those to panelists. I have a question also on, on venture capital, because, many of the people here would potentially be looking to raise venture capital or have raised venture capital. And I think, one of the questions I had is like, what value add has having a VC on the cap table brought for you, if any? How do you think about how that has helped you, from whether it's from a diversity perspective or other perspective as well?
I'll start on that one. And I've been, Gunita and I have been working quite closely. So that's been, for us, I mean, we can't build what we are envisaging to build without VC funding. It's not, we are a deep tech business, so there's a big overhead of R&D up front, and it's just not something you can kind of like quickly knock a proof of concept and then go and sell it to people. It's like we're selling to enterprise, we're building, like there's like a big kind of NLP and like AI aspect to what we do. So there's a lot of, we need VC funding, and we need that's kind of a very much something that we expected from the start. So that as a baseline is definitely something that just having access to the funds has been really good. I think the big thing about VC is, well, it's interesting because it forces your hand in a lot of ways, because in order to raise VC, you need to conform to a certain type of company, which is not the only type of company that exists, and certainly not the only type that can be successful, but it is a kind of a blueprint for a certain level of success and ambition. Level of ambition, I think, is probably the more relevant, because you can fail spectacularly and then work out really well. But anyway, so I think having a VC on the cap table it kind of like makes you grow up much more quickly in terms of, how professional you have to be, and how kind of thought through your vision has to be, because you need to like, it's not just about having some customers that like your products today. It's about, okay, but how does this become a big business? Because you might have a few customers that love what you're doing, but if you can't make money out of it, and then if you can't grow to a level that a lot of people will want what you're building, then it's not worth it. And so it's kind of the kind of level of ambition that you have to have is very, very different. So you definitely have to do a lot of kind of forward thinking and strategic kind of planning in order to do that. So that's kind of for the kind of wider background in terms of specifically working with VCs, and particularly, I mean, at the C stage, which is what where we are really, it's more around kind of helping you. The big thing is about kind of getting to a point where you can raise the next round, early on. So there's a lot of the the VC will be around kind of helping you navigate the market for fundraising, and kind of what the expectations of the market, and like you have those kind of ambitions of like things you want to do for the company and what you want to do, and you're like, oh, how does that kind of match what the expectation on the other side is? And the VC will be helped there to be your sounding board on that. And then more specifically on like, you're the subject matter expert for a lot of things about your business, like knowing about your customers, the technology that you're building, stuff like that. But there's a ton of stuff that you don't have the support because you're such a small company, HR, hiring, all of these. And that I go to Gunita the whole time, like, hey, can you help me find a person to talk to on this topic or that topic? And that's great, because we don't have, I'm the only non-tech person, really. Well, we have a product manager, but I'm the only person that looks after operations, HR, legal, all that kind of stuff. And so I don't have a team to support me on there. And so kind of, Speedinvest has been my go-to for a lot of these questions.
That's really good to hear. And yeah, we have lots of regular conversations, and it's good to hear that those are somewhat helpful as well. Yeah, no, for sure. I think you raised a lot of important points there on what the VC funding can help you with. And yeah, I don't know if Nathalie and Aiga, you had anything to add to that as well.
I would agree with Camille. It's the level of ambition is set when you take VC money, right? You want to build a business that scales and gets successful, and yeah, you need funds for this, and so it's great to get money from VCs, but it's also the expertise that you get through the VCs, right? To exchange views, to get references, to bounce ideas, to have them as sparring partners. So I do think that's another aspect that's super valuable for us.
Yeah, we're using VCs in the same way. We have a lot, but they brought, because of the investment, there's also a vested interest in making sure we're doing some of the things. We've had some of our best suggestions of things to do from some of our partners. So I would say it's very important, not just for the money, but for the expertise and areas in which the VCs are involved in, that you should pick who you partner with. Because that could be really important. So for us, Stefan has been amazing in building out our credit business. And so, that's been really important for us. So
that's really good to hear. And yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's been a great journey, I think, working with all of you, all three of your companies. So I think we're nearing the end of the hour. If anyone has any additional questions, please pop them in the chat. I think maybe as a leaving point, I don't know if any of you had any kind of top tips or any takeaways that you would like the audience to take away from here. But yeah, maybe we could just end with that.
I really like Nathalie's point earlier. I just encourage people to try and do it. Join any company that you find interesting, and bring the self-esteem to say that you want to take a leadership role. Fintech space is amazing to learn and to grow for yourself. I was fascinated by it when I came to PayPal, and I still am. And I would encourage every woman to engage and to have fun, really.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll add a quick follow-up point on that, which kind of, I think it's not necessarily just for women, but I think it particularly applies to women, because there's a whole kind of I think societal pressure of protecting the downside and being quite strategic about planning your career and that kind of stuff. But there's something that now I've been in startups for a while now, I'm kind of very relaxed about failure, and I think you have to become very comfortable with that if you're an entrepreneur, I think. But I think particularly around I think that extends beyond entrepreneurs to careers. As actually, if you're, I can see that particularly with engineers, they are very, very relaxed at switching jobs very quickly, and they know even if something fails, they'll be able to find something else very quickly, and they back themselves to find something good. And I think there's a little bit of that self-confidence, cool, you just try something, even if it doesn't work out, it's fine, you'll be able to find something else. And there's a little bit of if I look at myself a few years ago, I think I've always been relatively good at kind of taking risks, but I think there's a definitely, I'm much more comfortable with it now than I was around, oh, but hang on, what about this and this, and trying to kind of strategize about all the kind of various options, whereas actually that might have prevented me from taking more risk than I would have wanted. And so that's something that I'm kind of saying as an open invitation, is actually a lot of the things that you worry about don't actually matter, and you'll be able to do something about it down the line. So actually, if you do want to take some of the risks that you're thinking about, just go for it.
But I would like to add one more point. What I'd like to see more from VCs is to actually be a bit more demanding and bold in this topic, right? Because they want us to build the product of the future scalable companies. They should also say, look, build it also in a modern way. This is something weird when I always only see pictures of 4 guys wearing white shirts that are in their mid-20s, came from the same university, same background, they're all white. Is this going to be the breakthrough, really new, big thing? I don't know. I think VCs could be a bit more demanding and also put the finger in there and say, yeah, guys,
open-minded as well, I think, on that, of what can be revolutionary, and yeah, it's okay if it fails, which is what VCs are about anyways.
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail fast and learn quickly, I guess.
On that point, I heard something this week. I was on a panel and somebody said, there is no failure really, it's only feedback. And from good feedback comes great learning. So, that's definitely something women tend to be very harsh on themselves, including me. So I think that's something we all need to take away.
Awesome. Well, we have reached the end of our panel. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much to our panelists for the great engaging conversation. Yeah, if anyone has any follow-on questions, feel free to email me at any point in time. But otherwise, really appreciate it, and thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.